everybody, it's Kira and welcome back to the Yoga Corner. Today I'm going to be guiding you through a full body yin yoga class and I'm so excited to finally be able to offer yin yoga here as well. I first qualified as a Vinyasa flow yoga teacher. Vinyasa flow is the type of yoga that I personally do most often, and that is what you will see the most of here on this channel. It's a faster paced yoga that moves with the breath and I absolutely love it. But this year I also qualified as a yin yoga teacher, which I find is such a wonderful counterbalance and just accompaniment to a Vinyasa yoga practice. For anyone that isn't aware of what yin yoga is a type of yoga that involves staying in positions for a much longer period of time. Instead of moving in a flow, you stay in positions for between 2 and 5 minutes. And the scientific reason behind this is because we sit in positions so often that really means that we have muscle memory. The principle behind yin yoga is basically undoing that muscle memory. When we sit in positions for a really long period of time, such as in a yin yoga position, we can start to unpin the connective tissues that hold us in place, which might sound a little bit crazy, but when you're holding yourself, say, in a desk posture position, you're doing something that isn't so good for the body. And so by moving in an opposite direction and holding that position for a longer period of time, you basically allow the body to correct and undo all of those bad posture habits that we find ourselves in every single day. So yin yoga is absolutely wonderful, and like I said, such a great accompaniment to Vinyasa yoga. It has been highly requested, so I'm really excited to finally be able to share it with you. But if you haven't come across yin yoga yet, then this is the perfect opportunity to try it. This is a full body yin yoga. You can really get a feel for all of the different postures and just basically sit with the body and allow yourself to do some great work for your posture. Because it's yin yoga and because we're sitting in these poses for longer periods of time, we also often use props. So for this class, you will need 2 blocks. If you do not have yoga blocks, then thick books or even firm cushions would do the job just as well. You also will need a bolster, again. Cushions will do a job just as well, a folded up blanket, a duvet, anything like that. You don't actually have to have an official yoga bolster. And then finally, a blanket, another cushion would do the job as well. This is just going to be used for padding under the knees and maybe under your seat in one of the positions as well. So those are the props that you'll need for this practice. If you want to just run and quickly grab them, then just pause this video and come back to it when you're ready. And if you already have them handy, then we'll jump straight on into our practice. We're going to be started in a lying down position to begin with. We'll need our bolster for this first position. So make sure that your other props are nearby and that you can grab them quite easily. But for this first one, you'll just need your bolster. And we're going to be finding our saddle pose, which is an amazing pose for opening up the front of the body and perfect for anyone who's dealing with desk posture. We're going to start this pose on our knees. You want the bolster to be just behind you, but you can have a little wiggle around with it in a moment once you've found your position. We want our knees to be as wide as the mat and the big toes together. So if you're familiar with Vinyasa flow, this is our child's pose legs position, but instead of folding forwards, we're actually going to fold back over our prop. So once you've found the legs position, you can then bring the bolster towards the base of your spine. Make sure it's comfortable there. You might tuck it underneath your seat just to make sure it stays exactly where it's meant to. And then you can walk the hands back behind you and fold the back down over this bolster. Allow it to really support the head and the neck. Arms can just rest beside your body. You might feel an intense stretch for the front of the legs because this one can be quite difficult for those quads if they're a little bit tight. And of course, you might feel a sensation of opening over the front of the body. Now, the principle here in our yin yoga practice is not to go to your maximum level. You don't want to be at maximum intensity as soon as you reach into the pose because you will be sitting here for quite a few moments. And that means that the feeling that you're feeling right now will gradually build and intensify. So if you're already at your max level, you're not going to be able to stay with this posture for long. And we want to be able to stay as still as possible in order to allow that fascia, that connective tissue, to start undoing all of those connections that it's made. So if you want to prop yourself with an extra bolster, an extra cushion, something like that might make this feel more comfortable, then please feel free to go and grab it. The beauty about yin yoga is that we stay here for a little while, so you do have a chance to really set the prop up to make it as comfortable as it can be. And once you've found that comfortable position, close your eyes. Aside from the physical postures of yin yoga, one of the hardest parts about this practice is the fact that you have to stay still. Someone like me who likes to move around a lot often can struggle with this, and I know that a lot of you who enjoy vinyasa yoga will be able to relate as well. So it is not only a great exercise for the body, but also a really great challenge for the mind to force yourself into being still. A great way to allow yourself to sit with that sensation is by bringing your focus to the breath, allowing yourself to follow that flow of air. Maybe each time you breathe in, just subtly saying that word inhale inside your mind. And as you breathe out, repeating that word exhale, using that to ground and connect you through the practice, and knowing that as these feelings get more intense, you can use that breath to give you a little more stability. Allow yourself just to tune in, embracing the silence here. I'll let you know when it's time to release out of this posture. So just enjoy this position, enjoy the silence, and enjoy this opportunity to be still and connect with you and your breath. If your mind has started to wander, just gently guide it back towards the breath, knowing that wandering minds are completely natural, but that we have the power to just guide our attention back to a place that we want it to rest on. As we've been in this pose for a little while, you might have started to notice a particular part of your body might be shouting out to you, crying out for a little bit of attention. I'd like you to allow your attention to go to that part of your body, whichever part of the body where this pose feels like it's affecting you most. Allow your attention to rest there, sending your breath, your focus, and your attention to that part of the body. Gradually start to bring your attention back to the surface. We'll take 3 deep breaths in this pose just to really come back to our attention, to our bodies, to the energy. You might blink your eyes open here. We'll take a deep breath in through the nose. Big sigh out through the mouth. Big breath in through the nose. Full sigh out through the mouth. One more time. Inhaling in. Exhale to let it go. And then we're going to move out of this pose gently with control. You might be able to come up onto your elbows and then start to gently wiggle the spine up away from that bolster. You might like to counter this pose, just sending that bolster off to one side and maybe walking the arms forward. The legs are already in child's pose position. You can melt the chest down, bringing the forehead towards the mat and pausing in your child's pose. Just to counter that pose, we'll only stay there for a couple of moments. And in between all of our poses, please feel free to take any movements that feel good to you. This practice is yours. I'm just guiding you through, but it's really yours to do whatever you want with it. And then whenever you're ready, we're going to move on to our next pose, which is going to be a supported bridge, another great pose. This one is a slightly bigger opening for the chest, so it's a little bit nicer to follow on from that more gentle saddle pose and then open up the chest even more with your supported bridge. So with our supported bridge, we'll be needing our blocks. It's up to you how many you want to go. There are a couple of different layers, and I'll talk you through it as we move into these postures. So to begin with, we're going to come to lie down on our spines. You want to walk your feet back towards the body, almost so that if you have your hands on the ground, you can graze the backs of your heels. Allow the spine to be really flat on the ground and make sure that your blocks are within reaching distance. Keep your feet hips width apart. It can be easy to bring them either too close, you don't want them to be touching, but you also don't want them too wide. Bring them to that nice hips width distance. And then we're going to set up for that supported bridge. So with the supported bridge, instead of in our normal bridge pose where we lift up the hips and then support them just by squeezing the muscles, we'll be here for a little bit longer. So we're going to prop underneath the glutes or underneath the sacrum with a block. Now there's a few different variations here. The first one is to have the block on the lowest, flattest setting. You want to put it on the sacrum, which is the big flat part at the bottom of your spine. You should know you have it if you feel really steady, and with it on the flattest setting, if you can completely rest and lift both feet away from the ground without feeling wobbly. So that's the first version. You can have it on that flat setting. The second version is to turn it onto its side, so the second highest setting. As the bolster or the block starts to get a little bit narrower, you need to be a little bit more careful that you are putting it on the right part of the spine. So have a little wiggle around. You should feel it, because as soon as you put it on the sacrum and it's on that big flat hard part at the base of your spine, you should feel completely supported. Your next option, if this one feels like it's just a little bit too high, or maybe it feels not quite high enough but you're not ready to go into the highest setting, you could then use two blocks. Putting them both on their flattest setting, this gives you a little bit extra height, but it also gives you the benefit of having the wider surface area to rest the body on. And then your final option is, of course, to go for that highest setting with just this very top bit of the block underneath your sacrum. If you've gone for that highest setting, really be cautious in making sure that you are on the right part of the bolster or the block, and that you're making sure that your spine is completely supported. Toes are pointing forwards here in this pose, and hands can just rest beside the body. Give yourself a chance to look up towards the ceiling, making sure that you're not looking around or putting any pressure on the back of the neck here. And then I invite you to close the eyes. Just noticing how you feel in this posture, checking in with your body, noticing if any feelings or sensations are coming up here. Embracing them, noticing them, and then choosing to allow your attention to rest on the breath. Once again, allowing yourself to enjoy this silence and this time to connect with you and your breath. Something that if you really get that connection, you can take into any part of your life. That breath can always be there to support and carry you. So use these moments of stillness to find that connection. As we've sat here in this posture for a few breaths, maybe you've started to notice that part of your body where this pose feels most obvious to you, the part of your body that is most affected by this posture, either by feeling open, by feeling stiff, by feeling stretched, whatever it may be, whatever sensation you may be feeling, in whichever part of your body is calling out for a little bit of attention, just send your attention there. Allow your focus to turn to that part of the body. Not doing anything to it, still allowing yourself to remain still, but just simply sending your focus, your attention, your energy, and your breath to that part of the body. keeping the eyes closed, just start to bring your attention back to the surface. Once you've found that connection with your energy again, maybe you'd like to blink the eyes open. And we'll take those 3 deep breaths in to bring ourselves out of this pose. Taking a nice deep inhale in through the nose. Exhale to sigh it out. Inhaling in through the nose, nice and deeply. Exhaling completely. One more time, deep breath in. Exhale to let it go. And then to release out of this pose again, we're being really gentle with our bodies. You want to release the brick underneath you just by keeping the feet flat on the ground, but squeezing the glutes, lifting the hips up, and then reaching under, taking that block out. Straight away, just send the block out to one side. We'll bring the knees and the feet rather as wide as the mat, and we're going to windscreen wiper the knees out to the sides. Just gently shifting the feet from one side to the other, moving through those knees just to release out that lower back that you've just worked into. Really good. As always, you can take this time just to move through any other movements that feel good to you, and then we're coming up to our lunge position. So take your time. If I'm moving too quickly for you and you'd like to take more pauses in between poses, then please feel free to pause the video and then restart it whenever you're ready to move on to the next pose. But we are moving to our dragon lunge next, which is one that is a great stretch for the legs, the hips, and particularly the hamstrings, the backs of our legs. For this posture, you will also need your 2 bricks or books or whatever it is that you're using as supports for your body. And you'll also need a folded over blanket or cushion. For our lunge position, one leg is going to step out ahead and another leg is going to be back behind you. So we'll start with our right leg out ahead. You want to make sure that that right leg is just directly in a right angle. So you want your right knee is exactly on top of that right ankle. And then you're going to just make sure you can support that back knee, your left knee, with the blanket. Because we'll be in this posture for a little bit longer, it can feel a little bit pressured for that back kneecap on the ground. So just providing a little cushion for it there with either a blanket or a cushion just makes it feel a little bit more easy. Play around with the width and length that you'd like this pose to be. If you feel like you've got more space, you can move that cushion back behind you and widen your lunge, which will make it feel slightly more intense. You can keep those back toes tucked, but I would probably advise just having the foot flat on the ground, just because that's easier to maintain for a longer period of time. Once you've set the legs up, then you're going to grab a block. You want one block in each hand, and they're just going to come directly underneath your shoulders. So minimal pressure or movement required for the upper body. It just means that there's something for the hands to rest on, because when you're sitting here for a long period of time, the hands can feel a little bit uneasy just dangling there. So giving them something to rest on not only takes some pressure out of the legs, but also gives the hands somewhere to focus their attention. You might like to keep the eyes open for this one, just gazing forward, or as always, you can always take that option to close the eyes. Whatever version of this you've taken, I want you to, before you really settle into the pose, notice if you're holding yourself out of it, and if you are, can you allow those hips to soften? Imagine the hips moving forwards and then down. So you really get that sense of release through that right hip. You might feel a stretch for the back of the hamstring, for the hip flexor on that right leg, that bit between the crease of the thigh and your hip. And you might also feel a sensation of opening through the leg that's reaching back behind you. The body's moving in quite a few different directions here, and you're probably noticing quite a lot of sensations. Our dragon lunge can be quite intense. So this is where the breath becomes really important, where that breath can support you, guide you, and anchor you through the pose, where all you want to do is move around and get out of it, but actually, by staying still, you allow that body to find flexibility. This one's also a great posture for anyone working on the flexibility needed to get into splits pose. But by staying in it for a long time is where you'll really see that benefit and that flexibility developing. So settle into the pose. Eyes can be open or closed, but just really think about bringing your focus to the breath. allowing your attention to find that point on your body that feels the most effect of this pose, that feels the most stretched or the most activated, whichever part of your body is crying out for that little bit of attention or focus. Maybe the part of your body that wants you to move the most. Bring your attention to that part of the body. Send your breath there, and then choose to be still, or as still as you can. If your eyes are closed, you might like to open them as we take those 3 breaths, ready to release out of this pose. Taking a deep breath in through the nose. Exhale to sigh it out. Inhaling through the nose. Exhale to sigh it out. Deep breath in through the nose. Exhale to sigh it out. And then to release out of this pose, we just gently start to release that front leg, straightening it out, and then stepping it back behind us. However you want to take these couple of moments between legs is completely up to you. Have a little wiggle around, take any movements that feel good. And then we're getting ready to set up for the other side. You might just like to move the blanket or cushion over so that your other knee can rest directly on it. Back knee can come to rest on that blanket or cushion. That would be the right knee this time. And we're stepping the left leg out ahead. Making sure before we settle into the pose that we have that lovely right angle. Left knee is directly on top of the left ankle. Back leg is sort of reaching back, straightening behind you. And then we bring those blocks directly under the shoulders. Really allow yourself to find that sensation of releasing through the hips, allowing the hips to move down, forwards, in that sort of forwards and down movements. You really release them into this posture. That release is what's really going to allow you to see the benefits of it, although it is also what invites that feeling of intensity. We find that balance here by bringing the focus to the breath, by finding stillness, and by supporting ourselves with these props. We notice that we can allow ourselves to sit with feelings of intensity. Doesn't mean we have to enjoy them or crave them or want to do them again, but we just simply know that by sitting with them, by having a sense of balance and non-judgment towards those sensations, we can allow ourselves to open up to new experiences and of course to greater flexibility and range of mobility, which is I'm sure why many of us are doing this practice. So once you've found that posture, settled in, and have found a way to be as still as you can in this pose, you can either close the eyes or keep them open with the gaze directly ahead of you and just simply be. Allow yourself to connect with the breath, noticing that flow of air and trying to extend your exhales, knowing that when we bring those exhales into our control and make them as long as possible, we really invite that sensation of surrender, something that is so important for our yin practice, particularly in these more intense poses like our dragon lunge. Allow your attention to find that part of the body that feels most impacted by this pose. You might notice as we're doing a pose where we've done one side and then the other, that maybe on this side, the part of your body that feels most affected is different. The two sides of our body rarely match up completely. We're not always in complete balance or equilibrium between both sides. So it's interesting to notice which side of your body feels this pose in which areas. Perhaps where you might be holding tension, or where you might have a little bit more space or flexibility from one side to the other. Just simply notice that. Allow your attention to find that part of the body on this side. And just allow your stillness to remain as your breath guides you through these final few moments of this pose. If the eyes are closed, you might like to gently blink them open as we get ready to take those 3 big releasing breaths, taking these final few moments in this posture. Take a deep breath in through the nose. Exhale to let it go. Inhaling through those noses. Exhale to sigh out through the mouth. One more time, inhaling through the nose. Exhaling through the mouth. And once again, we start to straighten out that front leg until we can release it out completely. Really nice. Give yourself those couple of moments to settle out of this posture. We won't need the bricks for our final practice, but we will be using our blanket and our bolster. So whenever you're ready, we're getting ready for our caterpillar pose, which is a lovely seated forward fold. Great for releasing the back of the body, the backs of the legs, and just in general to relax completely. So in our seated forward fold, our caterpillar pose, you might like to prop underneath your seat with your blanket. That can just give you a little bit more height. It can make this pose feel more comfortable, and of course, because you're sitting for quite a long period of time, it also just makes the pose more comfortable for the sitting bones, which would otherwise just be directly on the ground. If you are practicing at home and you have carpet, then that might not be quite as applicable, but if you're on a hard floor, then giving yourself that cushiony surface just makes this a little bit nicer and easier to find stillness. When we're using our props in yin, we're not always just thinking about comfort, but we're thinking about what feasibly will allow us to keep our bodies as still as possible throughout the pose. And sometimes giving yourself that extra comfort or cushioning is the thing that you need to do in order to make yourself stay still for longer. With that in mind, we also want to bring our bolster, our cushion, or whatever it is that you've been using for the bolster underneath the knees. This means that you can have a little bend in the legs. And again, it raises the ground up and just gives you something to rest on. We're going to take a deep breath in, and with that breath in, we raise our arms up to the sky. As we exhale, we start to hinge from the hips, folding forwards, reaching until we can't go any further, and then softening the hands down. Your hands might find your feet, or they might more easily rest on the ankles, the calves, or perhaps even the mat beside you. There's no reason why they have to hold onto a part of your body. Settle the hands wherever they feel most comfortable. Allow your head to dangle and be heavy, and you really want to try and allow your chest and stomach to rest on the thighs. That's why we've got this nice bend in the knees and why we've lifted them up with the bolster. So find yourself in a position that feels comfortable to you. You might feel a sensation of opening through the backs of the legs, particularly through those hamstrings, but you'll also be feeling a sensation of stretching through the back of the body. Maybe there's a sense of release or even maybe tension through the shoulders and the upper back, kind of countering those chest opening poses that we took at the beginning of our practice. Really allowing that upper back to relax as much as you possibly can. I invite you to close the eyes in this posture so that you can really just surrender and relax as much as you can. Allowing your attention to come to the breath and your body to melt towards stillness.
Caterpillar can often be quite a relaxing pose, but actually when we find ourselves feeling relaxed in yin yoga, in a pose that's maybe not quite as challenging as some of the other ones we've done, it can be even easier for the mind to wander, for your thoughts to stray and yourself to start just thinking about other things that you might be doing after this practice is finished. So whilst this pose maybe doesn't feel like quite as much of a physical challenge for your body, I invite you to use these moments here in our caterpillar pose to really connect with the mind, trying to take as much control as you can over your responses to your thoughts. This isn't to say that you can't have thoughts. That is exactly what the mind's job is, to sort of come up with thoughts to bring us things to think about, but it is in your control to guide your attention away from those thoughts, to take note of them, to think that you might return back to them later, but to choose in this moment, here and now, to focus instead on the breath. So each time a thought comes up whilst we sit here in our caterpillar pose, I invite you to remind yourself of your breath. Each body is different, and perhaps this pose does feel like quite a physical challenge to you. However it's feeling, whether this pose feels extremely intense or really relaxing, I invite you to find that point of your body that feels the most impact from this pose. That might be really obvious. There might be a part of your body that's crying out for your attention, just as you might have felt in one of the other poses we've taken. Or it might be a more subtle sensation that you're feeling, something that maybe you have to search for. But once you've found that part of your body, just gently guide your attention towards it, allowing your breath and your focus to rest with that part of your body. If your eyes are closed, you might like to gently blink them open as we take those 3 final breaths in this pose. Take a deep breath in through your nose. Exhale to sigh it out through the mouth. Inhaling through the nose. Exhaling to sigh it out. One more time. Inhale deeply through that nose. Exhale to let it go. And with your next inhale, gently roll up through the spine, releasing from this pose 1 vertebra at a time. Really good. You might take a bend through the knees and gently release your bolster off to one side. Move that blanket or cushion that you might have had underneath your seat, and we'll meet in a seated position. Finding a position here that's comfortable to you. Maybe it's cross-legged, maybe it's another position. But find somewhere that allows your legs to be heavy, your spine to be long, and your chest to be open. We'll bring the hands together at the heart space, taking a deep breath in gratitude for yourself, for taking the time for stillness, for breath, and just for you. Been wonderful to practice with you. A big thank you from me. If you have any requests for other yin classes you'd like to see, any particular body parts that you'd like me to focus on, do let me know in the comments down below. I'd love to share what you want to see. Namaste.